Welcome to the Humans and Earth podcast. We bring you inspiration and practical resources for healing our planet and ourselves. It is time for soulful contributions that regenerate life on Earth.
I'm Helen Claire Harmon, a thought leader and teacher who believes we're ready to renew Earth and heal ourselves in the process. Welcome to today's episode. Welcome to the Humans and Earth podcast. I am really excited to talk today with Akilah Martin, a soil scientist, community activist, and life coach. Akilah Martin is first and foremost in partnership with soil and water. Akilah earned her BS degree in soil science from Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University and her doctorate from Purdue University in agricultural and biological engineering. Her professional interests include enhancing relationships of individuals and communities to environmental and natural resources. Her teaching and scholarly research interests are centered in soil and water quality in urban communities. Current projects include food sovereignty, Chicago Grows Food, Advocates for Urban Ag, life expectancy and health inequalities, installing rain gardens to create a sponge town, and building a container garden for growing your own groceries. Akilah is abundantly living life through two core values, freedom and joy. To that end, she is a certified coach specializing in building vibrant relationships. You can find Akilah's website at amrootbuilders.com, and I will also put that in the show notes. Welcome, Akilah. It is really great to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you, Helen Claire. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and providing this opportunity for me to speak to you and to the world.
Yeah. So as I emailed you, when I came across an article that mentioned that you're both a soil scientist and a life coach, I really lit up. I have some friends who are soil scientists. I'm pretty into dirt, soil myself. And I'm really interested in talking to people on this podcast who are putting the earth and the human conversations together, which you're obviously doing in your academic background and in your community activism and your coaching. So I would just really like to hear you talk about how did these pieces come together for you, and how do you see your scientific training and interests and your community activism interests and your coaching work as maybe fitting together beautifully or maybe being contrasting pieces of your life and work?
Yeah, so as I tell everyone, I was doing science projects in the womb. My mom, she was a science teacher at Chicago Public Schools, and so of course she made me do science projects every year. And so at that point, science was on the brain. Science was something that I did. That was something that we connected on. And she, had the forethought to say, this is some talent. This is a path. Let's do it. This is how you can, build wealth. This is how you can, go to college, things of that nature. And so I went to the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences here. And we learned all about ag in different ways. And it, it opened our minds and gave us an opportunity to, go to historically Black colleges and universities as a group. And a lot of my time was spent on plant science, plant pathology, and things of that nature. And I was like, I don't want to do plants anymore. So what's the next best thing? And it was soil. And completely random choice. The school that I chose, Alabama A&M, I had mentors that graduated from there at UIC who were plant pathologists. And they were like, you should go there. It's exciting. It's great. It's great for people like you. They're going to embrace you. And when I got there, I just felt the love, and it was an amazing experience. And I really didn't have any clue about soil. I knew everything about plants, but nothing about soil. And so it was surprising to the teachers there, the professors, the faculty, that, someone like me from Chicago, of all places, would be interested in something agriculture related. So once I got there, all the professors there were great. I got a chance to work with NASA. I got a chance to go to Germany to do soil remote sensing with microwave sensors. I mean, the list goes on. And to me, the universe was speaking and said, okay, so this is it. This is a path. And my mom wanted me to come closer to home for grad school. So that's why I chose Purdue, because it's 2 hours away. I can get there, quickly from here to there. And I started off in the agronomy department there, which is the study of crop and soil science. And my project was about quantifying crop residue using remote sensing. And I really love that project. I love my major professor there. I just did not like the energy in the department because I was really the only person who looked like me there. And they made it clear that really I wasn't welcome. And so I had to think about, okay, what's next? Because I know I wanted to get a doctorate and I had plans to stay there in that department. But once I had a few experiences, I said, no, I'm not going to do this. This is not for me. So I went across the street to the ag and bioengineering department where they embraced me and everyone else that was very different. And I worked on several different projects there with different professors. And it was just an amazing experience. I started at Purdue with a different mindset and left there with, okay, this is awesome. And, have an opportunity to go to the different international organizations and present on soils, on water, on modeling. It's one of those experiences that you just can't, you can't compare. And I knew that, my mom was a teacher. And I was like, well, I don't know if I really want to teach, if I want to educate. But I knew at that point, I didn't really want to be an adult right after finishing the PhD. So I stayed there for the the postdoc for a year. And then I was like, okay, it's time. So a position in Chicago actually came up and I was able to secure that. And that was really exciting because I wanted to move back to Chicago. And I was there teaching, doing research, community work, collaborating, and it was an amazing experience. And just last year, I kind of transitioned to a new career. So I'm at a different place now, doing different things, exciting things. I've met so many people over the last year, just, from doing different presentations around soil health, around the Grow Your Own Groceries campaign, because people are now in Chicago really into urban ag. And so that is kind of where I am now, helping different organizations, figure out that soil part, because people are really, really interested now in soil health. So I found a way in through there. And then with the coaching, how that came to be was I was mentoring adult learners for 13 years. And to me, it was just a natural progression. And at my first career, I was appointed to associate dean position. And I have had leadership positions before, but maybe not like that. And so one of my mentors there, she had finished her coaching certificate and she said, well, why don't we, do some coaching together? And I was like, okay, let's try it. So she coached me for about a year. And it was such a transformative experience that I just knew I needed to go to the program that she went to do coaching. And once I made that decision to do that, my life opened up. I mean, that experience was amazing. My leadership style changed. And I think above all, that was like, 2018, 2019 was one of those very enlightening moments where I started really listening to a lot of different things from the universe. And a lot of things has changed in my life since I've been doing that. And so I've had an opportunity to coach several different people of all walks of life, all different ages, all different phenotypes. And to me, it came to one thing. It's about that relationship that you have with yourself and how you navigate this earth. And for me, thinking about the soil, thinking about the environment, thinking about the earth is so important that that relationship that you have with the earth, that's number one. Because if that isn't right, if that isn't balanced or whatever word you want to put there, sometimes it makes it challenging and difficult to maneuver with your other relationships. So, and when you think about exercise, health or wellness, they always say to start with your core, to build that core. And that's how I see that. Build that core is equal to the earth. Making sure you have that relationship with the earth, that you understand its power, its its beauty, its connection, its interconnectedness is so important, you know, as you make different decisions about your life, about your family, about your friends, about, you know, how you build your professional career, how you, you know, build your personal things that you want to do. It's there, and it's glaringly in our face now with all the things that we're going through, that it is important that we understand the earth, or at least some semblance of an understanding, so that, you know, we are making decisions that have a much better impact. I'll leave it at that.
Yes. Well, I love everything you just said. As you know, I have a grad school background as well. I have a PhD. My husband's PhD is actually from Purdue.
Oh, wow.
And he's from Chicago. So I know your area a little bit. And I really appreciate how you described the coaching modality. I think it's really important because it's so focused, right? You know, if people need therapy, that's great. That's a longer term thing. But coaching is so focused and action oriented, which I think is really meaningful. I would love to definitely hear more about your work with food and soil in Chicago, but maybe we'll get to that in a minute, because I hope you'll talk about that quite a bit. Tell us a little bit more first about what happens when you coach someone from your earth-aware place, because I completely relate to everything you said about earth, nature really being our core, our home. That's a relationship that we need to be aware of, and I don't know if working on is quite the right term, but certainly working with, and it really impacts our other relationships. More and more people are coming to see that, but that's not exactly a mainstream belief right now. So when you approach coaching, and that's part of your viewpoint, what happens with your clients? Are they open to that, or do only people who already think that way find you? How's that working?
That's a great question, Helen Claire. I think it's all of the above. Some of the people that I've had an opportunity to be in a coaching relationship with, they already knew who, you know, my background. And then some were already in that particular area, not necessarily soil, but earth, you know, the human and nature connection. And we had several conversations around that. And so they kind of knew that. I'll have to say it's been a challenge to bring people in a way over to that type of thinking, and notwithstanding family and friends. And so I've sat and thought about what message what message could I provide, or me with other people, that will catalyze others to at least start consciously thinking about it, and not necessarily at that point doing anything, but just consciously thinking about it differently. And I have to say, I haven't come up with anything so great yet, but it's definitely been a conversation around that. And as far as the coaching goes, I talk about, you know, the word root is in my in the company name, because I had to have the word root, because roots are the foundation. They really hold the soil together so that it's not displaced. The root also moves the nutrients and the water to the plant. And so for me, thinking about that with people in coaching, thinking about that root, thinking about that core, thinking about that foundation, that's how I segue into that relationship with yourself, because you need your nutrition, you need your water, you need a strong foundation so that you have those core values, which I always ask my clients to do an exercise about values. And that's something that they had us do in a coaching program, which is why I wrote in my bio that my 2 core values are freedom and joy. And I feel like those are the top 2, because joy it encompasses everything. If I'm joyful, none of the other stuff matters, because it's already part of that. I'm already safe. I'm already self-care. All those other words that you can choose, joy to me is at the top tier, and freedom is so important, so that you can, or me, in this instance, can make decisions without any other parameters or challenges. You're free to make those creative decisions. You're free to do those creative actions. You're free to just be you. And that's one of the things with coaching is that, we have this inner critic that sometimes we let guide us, and really digging into that voice that we allow to hold us back from really reaching that true goal or that true dream or vision or whatever it is that that the client is trying to reach, and really getting at the heart of that. And sometimes that can take some time, and sometimes people already know what that is. And now at that point, we want to figure out, okay, so how do we move past that so that you as a client can reach whatever it is that you're trying to reach. And that's one of the most important things, is really that self-reflection, and really listening to that core, like following that first mind, terminology that you use. So like, I know when we were in coaching, they talk about the word need, the word should, things like that. The word, asking questions, why questions and things like that could be judgmental. So I talk people through that type of terminology and have them do different exercises throughout the week or weeks, so however long, that they want to do that, to kind of take a step outside themselves and really notice from top to bottom, head to toe, what's my body language when I'm in the conversation with whoever, what am I feeling? What are my hands doing? What are my eyes doing? What's coming up for me when I'm in this position, and so that they can really understand, who they are and how they want to be in this universe. And it's not always about how they're, going to interact with the earth, of course, but at the same time, all of the entities on earth, including us, are part of the earth. And so, thinking of that holistically is important for me to get that message out in a way that's gentle, and when I know that they can be accepting of that.
Yes. I really appreciate your emphasis on freedom and sovereignty. I think that's where we're going in the next few decades. I think we're going to see more and more emphasis on that, with a greater awareness that we can always find support in nature as we're working on our own freedom, sovereignty, autonomy, the kinds of really important personal growth that coaching sponsors. We can always find support, or rather, there is always support, right? I really like to think about how, well, do you have oxygen right now?
Right. Exactly.
Do you have water? So,
Exactly.
The trees are supporting you right now so that you can breathe, and the soil is supporting you. And
exactly, Helen Claire, that is so true.
It's exciting to think about it like that.
Yeah. And I tell people that, water is the next edge of of all types of things, because water, the amount of water that we have that's for drinking is about this much. And there's, the population is pretty big, and really thinking about where you live, is there water available first? And secondly, what's happening to that water? Basically, who's using it? What are they doing to it? What type of regulations or laws or, all that's happening in your town? Those are things that people should know. And those are things that when I was in the classroom or the learning space, those are things that I definitely, messages I put out there in a way, not to scare people, because that's not what I want people to do. I just want them to be informed that you want to be more involved, more active in what's happening to your environment, because as we can see through news articles, all types of things, that the environment impacts your mental health, it impacts your physical health, which in turn has a spiraling effect on how you are.
Yes.
So,
and when we are living in a time when the great majority, you probably know the details better than I do, but the majority of water in the US is now contaminated with agricultural chemicals. So soil very involved there, but that's what we're drinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're drinking agricultural chemicals.
Yeah. And when I go a step further and tell people that soil is the natural filter of water, they're like, is it? Yeah. So how do you think they're getting water for these water bottles? They're getting it from the aquifer. They're getting it from the, the groundwater. And the water is expecting the soil to do its job, which is to filter it out, so that when someone builds a well, that water is, free and clear to some degree, for drinking, not just by us as humans, but, animals and things of that nature. And so definitely, even if I talk about soil, I'm always going to talk about water. It's just a natural conversation for me, because they go hand in hand. They're very much symbiotic.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I just watched last night this new documentary, 2040, by an Australian filmmaker. And I'm happy to tell you, he has several little segments in the documentary. It's basically about existing sustainability measures that could kind of save us by 2040. And he has several segments about soil and water. And I was thinking, when you were talking about roots earlier, about one thing that they feature in the film, which is how roots are not only kind of our past, our foundation, our stability, as you were talking about, but they're our future, because they can handle carbon sequestration. So that's exciting. I mean, all this soil, water, root stuff, it's not only exciting, but it's actually salvation for human beings and planet Earth in the next few decades. And that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I know I was just reading something about, because it's been so hot here in Chicago. Not that it's not hot in the summer most of the time, but now that we're at home more, and a lot of our blocks, the trees have either been cut down, or, we had a lot of oaks that had a lot of issues because of invasive species. So a lot of blocks don't have trees. And so it's really hot, when that sun comes out. And I'm listening to people, they're now seeing the importance of trees, not just for what they do for oxygen and things, but they actually keep your house warm. Cool, shaded. And so they've had a movement here that they, before COVID happened, of course, they were trying to, go in different neighborhoods to have people, they were planting trees or doing it with you as the homeowner, because it's important to have, trees, and, they have all types of benefits, not just the oxygen and things of that nature, but they also just bring, as you said earlier, some peace, when people see green vegetation, and then you see that tall tree is standing strong, gives you some type of inspiration that, I can stand strong as well and withstand these winds that we have in Chicago.
Oh, I know. I grew up in a cold place, but some of my winter visits to Chicago have been a whole new level of cold.
Yeah, I have to say it gets cold here.
Yeah, it really does. So tell us about your community work. I would love to hear about that.
I made it clear when I started my teen track position that my work is all about the community. It doesn't matter. I'm always going to be a part of the community, because I felt in my position of what I had learned and what I was ready to put out there to other people to learn, I couldn't just stay in this little box at this university and just only teach to people who can afford to pay this. That wasn't going to work. So I'm working with so many organizations. I'm almost at the point where I have to say no. And I don't like saying no, but I'm overwhelmed because of all the stuff that's happening. And I just think it's so awesome. It's really great that it's all happening at once. But to answer your question, I'm on several boards. One of them is the Friends of the Forest Preserves. That is mainly for Cook County, so that's in Chicago and some of the surrounding suburbs. We do a lot of advocacy work. We have lots of grant funding now, so we have lots of youth, teens, and young adults who do work out in the forest. So whether they're doing burns or seeding or cutting down buckthorn or other invasive species, we are always in talks with the forest preserves. We're always in talk with the county and the city. Well, mostly the county, because we don't have as many forest preserves in the city as we do, in the suburbs. On the board of the Advocates for Urban Agriculture, Their mission is really to, boost up and promote urban ag in the city. And so one of the things that they've been campaigning for is water rights and the use of water for different organizations who have farms or gardens who want to, build wealth that way and also help the community with food. So they've been in lots of conversations and discussions around that. I just, in March, and this is an amazing organization I was a part of. We've been able to do so much in 5 months. It blows my mind, but we're calling ourselves Chicago Grows Food. We just did a press conference last Friday. We did I don't remember what we called it, but it was basically just kind of putting ourselves out there online, where we have a chef. We had people in the garden, just showing how things can happen really quickly, really easily. And then the Grow Your Groceries campaign started with one of my colleagues, Oren. He's at UIC. So we've been knowing each other for a few years now. He's my earth spirit. And we worked on a curriculum about just everything related to food. And that's from soil to water to sunlight to seeds to just everything, cooking, nutrition. And so we created this thing called the Grow Bag, or the Grow Kit in a sense. And so we've been distributing that to families. So it comes with some soil, it comes with a container, and it comes with some seeds. And people are able to pick those up. And as a family or as an individual, they can start growing something really easily. And we give instructions on what that looks like. That's been growing. We even had to apply for grant money because we ran out of Grow Kits because so many people wanted them. And so that's what we've been working on now, is kind of, boosting the name so that people can see who we are and apply for grant funding that way. I just received a grant with another peer of mine who's at UIC. She's a nurse. She's also faculty there. We're working on food sovereignty. So we are going to be doing interviews in different neighborhoods in Chicago with people. We had a specific method we wanted to do, but of course, when you're working with grantors, they want you to do it their way. And that's that whole freedom part that I war with a lot. Because the things we wanted to do, we had to maneuver those, or I guess in a sense, change them so that it fits what they want. But at the end of the day, our thing is really talking about how people can break away from food insecurity. That's like number one at the top for that particular project. My other one that you read about, the rain gardens, I hadn't been able to do it this year because of COVID. However, in the past 2 years, I had a grant with Purdue. We had a grant for me to go out and build rain gardens in communities here in Chicago. And so I was able to build like 4 in 2018, 2019. And it was with the community. So a few of them were with churches, and they had their patrons come out and help from all ages and just learn about the soil and water. Because we get a lot of storms here, and a lot of our storms now have been, causing havoc. People's homes are flooding and things of that nature. And so I kind of tie that into it, and how, life and water and things like that go hand in hand, because some people don't make that connection. So one of the things that I try to do with people is talk about that to make it applicable to their life, and not necessarily do that overhead talk, but make sure that they understand, or, find some way that they can see that. And flooding homes is something that we all know in Chicago, because I know I even went through it myself. And so a lot of my community work is around, of course, soil, water, advocacy. I had another project we worked on. I was working with an anthropologist and a social worker. They were both faculty. We had a grant to do work on the inequalities of health, and looking at the soil in different communities, because we have a lot of contaminated soil here, just because of the industries that, that are here or were here and now have left and didn't necessarily remediate the area. So we interviewed several different people and provided them the opportunity to have their soil tested, and some didn't want it, some did. So, I took their soil samples, talked to them about what I was doing, and then I had the soil tested, and then I would, send them the results and talk them through it. Some people even took it as far as to their aldermen and had conversations with them like, hey, how can we rectify this? So it was pretty interesting to have that out there in the waves for people to really see that it's time to be more more advocacy about what you're eating, where it's coming from, who's providing it. That whole stream of food is so important. And I know that people are really, getting more interested in that because they see how their food really impacts their health. And honestly, it impacts your mental health at the top.
Yes.
What you eat definitely impacts what your brain is able to do and capable.
Yes.
And so, people are making that connection. So they are wanting more literature or more understanding of, okay, so if I grow my own food, I know what's in it, what's happening, and, I can feel safe in knowing, what's going into my, into my body.
Yeah. So exciting. You are doing a lot. I'm a home gardener, permaculturist, really into that. So from a personal level, I understand some of your priorities. I've also, as I mentioned to you, I work with students in a course that's focused on food justice, food sovereignty, and has a fieldwork component. So I really get the value of addressing these issues hands-on in a community. So I'm glad we still have plenty of time, because I'm realizing after hearing you describe all that, there are two things I would really like to hear your thoughts on. And I think I'll tell you both and you can address them in whatever order you want. One is, how do you take care of yourself as someone who's making so many contributions? That's an interest of mine, because I think I'm going to use the word activist. I don't know if that's your favorite word, and feel free to substitute, but I'll just use the word activist for now. I think a lot of activists or people who are serving and contributing a lot burn out. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced some of that, so I've become really interested in concepts of supported service and self-sustaining service. And I'm actually going to be bringing forth an e-course that has a component of that. I think it's really crucial, because you and I are people who recognize, and probably all of our listeners too, there is so much that needs healing and regeneration mm-hmm. in the natural world. And there are so many people who need healing and regeneration. So we have our work cut out for us for the rest of our lifetimes. How are you taking care of yourself to sustain yourself? So that's one question. The other is, you and I both know, and I think more and more people are becoming kind of rapidly aware, certainly in the US, and I think in other countries too, that we made a terrible mistake in the 20th century to have our environmental and our racial and economic justice conversations be separate. That was really not the right way to see things. And so a lot of people now are recognizing environmental justice, racial and economic justice, urban issues, urban justice. This is all the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear you talk more about that, and you pick which one you want to go into first.
No, that's a great question about the self. How am I taking care of myself with all of the different things that I'm working on? So I've been very strategic on what projects, what things I do. For me, I wanted them to all be synergistic, so I didn't feel like I was being pulled here mentally and pulled there. And some type of, challenges or difficulties could occur because of that, because I couldn't choose if I wanted to do that or that. So I wanted to make sure that everything had some type of core connection, so that it felt reasonable for me to be able to put these ideas out there and my time, my energy. And it definitely, once I last summer when I ended my first career, that load, that level of stress that I was carrying for those 13 years whew, that was one of those moments where, okay, so it definitely had me realize that I don't want to go back to that. I want to be able to do what Akilah wants to do. And one of those things that what really makes me joyous is coaching and also talking about soil. And those are the two things I've been doing. So for me, those are really self-sustaining for me and keep me motivated, inspired, and hopefully inspiring others and encouraging others. Some things I do physically is, which I haven't done in the past month because I just moved, was Bikram yoga. I love Bikram yoga. I love to read. I spend a lot of hours reading books. And I miss holding the book, but I'm so used to having my iPad now or my phone to read, and I can search and go back. That is like, okay, so if I choose the book, I can't search for terms and things of that nature. But I love reading. So those are two things definitely that I do. And the other one is definitely spending time with my mom. I make sure that her and I have our time together. And those moments bring us both joy. She just gave me her bracelet from when she graduated from college 48 years ago. So it's just things like that, those moments that just learning about her history, or her story, her walk, and being able to connect with that and see her as a whole being and not just a mother, but as an individual. And so I've been spending a lot of time with her because I don't have internet here. So I go to her house to use her internet. So we've been having lots of time together to talk and, do projects together and really, get to know each other differently than we have before, just because I'm getting older as well. And I have different priorities, different things I'm doing, different ways of, different methodologies. So it's been really interesting. COVID has been a little rough, but it's also been great in some instances because I've been able to connect with people that I wouldn't have prior to this. So building those connections have been really important for me because I am an only child, and I think about that a lot. Like, okay, so who would I have, going forward? So those are kind of things I think about.
Yeah.
And for your other question about separating the environment and what was the other environment and
well, I used the terms racial justice and economic justice and urban issues. I mean, there are other, sovereignty. I mean, there are other terms we can bring in. So feel free, however you see it.
Yeah, no, and I can really speak to what's happening here in Chicago because it's so much. And, people definitely try to separate those two for lots of reasons. And it's so much suffering that sometimes it's overwhelming, and it's to the point where, like, what do you say to people? Because I've been in so many different spaces with people who live in communities just here in Chicago, who just in April they decided to take down a coal fire plant, and then all this soot and blackness was just covered that whole community, their homes, their cars, their bodies, their soil, their trees, just everything. It's like, how could you do that to a community that's already suffering from contamination? And the conversations are never about that. I mean, like I tell people, the values of our world are about, power and money. They're never about the human connection. They're never about the value of who we are.
And wellness for people and the planet, right?
Yeah. And as long as those values stay at the top, people don't make the other parts a priority because they only can see that I need to get there if I want that life. And not knowing that, or not seeing that this environment is so important to build up, or at least have a connection to and advocate for. Yeah. And so that's why I'm doing some of the projects that I do, so that people see that we support them. And me at this point specifically, that I support whatever it is to help these people whether it's fighting, advocating, writing letters, protesting, whatever it is that, we can do to help. And I know that, people that look like me, of course, we live in communities where it's highly polluted because just about everybody here has asthma, which is totally unfortunate. Even I have asthma. And it's like when I go to other places, I'm fine. But living here, it's rough. And I know other people are suffering through that. And people are suffering through so many health disparities. Just the food the food or the non-access to food, or when I say food, because we can say anything is food, but the types of food that would be holistic and nurturing to your soul, to your body, lots of people don't have access to that. And it doesn't make sense why. And some of the responses that have been written in different articles and in the news is, well, they don't want that. How do you know? How do you know what we want? Have you asked us? And, several communities don't have, access to grocery stores. They just have access to corner stores that only sell sugar. And so what do we get? Diabetes.
Oh, yeah. Here in Philadelphia, too. I mean,
yeah.
Philly has a really serious problem with grocery store access. So does Camden, several cities in this metro area. And unfortunately, that's true across the country in urban areas.
It is. And it's very disheartening to see that those conversations, as you said, are separate. And I can see people here are not, they definitely are trying to make the connection. And when they talk or when they're writing things, that they're making it clear that these things are connected. Now, whether or not people are listening, as Erykah Badu says, what good do your words do if people don't understand you? It's so true. And, the messages that we can send out, as I've talked to my different colleagues and peers, is, well, that message maybe not working anymore. People don't want to hear that. There may be a different message that we need to send. And this shouldn't always be negative. We don't need to show pictures of suffering or things of that nature. It could just be, why can't we just take control of that? Why are we waiting on the government or some other individuals to provide us something? So that's why we have this food sovereignty project, this growing your groceries. Let's do it ourselves. So, and I think that's what's most important now. We can't keep waiting. Just got to do it.
Yeah. I think that's really wise. And I mean, also there needs to be ongoing activism for changes in government at higher levels. But I think I've really become convinced that local community-based sovereignty approach is where it's at. And I also appreciate what you said about how the message doesn't always need to be negative. I really worry that we built an approach in the last few decades with poverty and environmental issues of saying, this is what's really scary and bad and sad, and you should feel bad.
Right.
Well, as far as I can tell, that approach did not inspire us to fix these things. And so I try to really carefully articulate, I'm not advocating for denial, but it does seem like a focus on, here's the empowering option for your wellness or your community's wellness or for the earth or for humans and earth together. Here's what's empowering and beautiful. Would you like to participate in this?
Exactly.
I really think, and I hope as we keep testing it, that is going to have a lot more power and build a lot more momentum.
I agree, Helen Claire. And we've been in different conversations with different people with different talents and different creativity. Okay, so how can we build some greenhouses with what we already have in our yards, in our garages or homes or apartments or whatever, so that we can just do it. We can build our own, self-sustaining system of not just food, but everything, clothes, products, whatever it is that, you say that you want, so that system is locally controlled, maintained, sustained, and those decisions are made collectively and not by just one person or individuals who do not have your best interest at heart. And And, that's powerful. And it's also, to some people, it could be overwhelming because now, you got to think, you got to use your brain. And now you actually have to put some energy into it. Some real energy, some real active physical energy is not something you could just sit back and wait on. And some people may not be ready for that. But I've met at least 100 people in the last year that are ready. So I'm convinced that some semblance of that is going to happen soon.
And that's all you need, right? Mm-hmm. I keep meaning to look up some of the research. I think there's been quite a lot done by sociologists on how tiny a percentage of a population you need in mm-hmm. order to create big change. Yep. I always tell my students, don't imagine that the US Congress voted 100% in favor of women's right to vote, because they didn't. Right. When it comes to a voting situation, you just need that critical percentage. And when it comes to switching a whole culture, I think the work that's been done to identify that effective percentage of cultural creatives, I want to say I've read it's like 3 to 4% of the population. I need to look that up. But that is so inspiring, because if a lot of people are not ready to take responsibility and step forward and contribute, it's actually okay, as long as you have an active core of people who are going to be the innovators, the front runners, and show this is possible here, we're doing it. And then of course you have that next core group of people who join, and then the percentage after that.
Right, and then that's where coaching comes in.
Yeah.
To get those other people involved, to figure out that way to get them active in it. And, everybody has something that they can contribute. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same. And that's what makes it so beautiful, that, everyone has a different way that they can bring to it so that it builds, and it's a beautiful flower. And so those are, messages that we definitely, want to send, out there into the universe.
Yes. So where do you see your focus going in, say, the next 6 to 12 months? Will it be continuing to build the projects that you've talked about?
Yeah, so the Grow Your Groceries definitely is getting hot. We are definitely on that. I've been asked by another organization called Big Green to do some digital learning materials around soil. And because their audience is youth to families, and so they want some material for youth, and then some material for some also for teachers. So they have teachers as a resource as well. So building curriculum for them to go out then and teach the kids. And so I've been thinking, what are some really, because I know people's attention span is not very long, especially online, and I guess in reality, we would be doing these in person, of course, especially when it comes to soil. So really thinking about how can we keep it engaging? What are some things I can put out there for them that are quick, engaging, that they can learn something, they can actually do something. So those are the things that, the 3 things I'm looking at. And one of the things that I told them I really would like to put out there is soil axiology. And thinking about how different cultures, different groups of people, different, things of that nature, how we interact with the soil. I really want to write something about that. Only thing that's stopping me is I'm too busy doing all this community work and research and coaching and all these other things. And at some point I am making time to do that, because I think it's so important, and it'll put a lot of things in perspective and around soil, and just especially for people who look like me, who may have an aversion to ag, and how powerful that connection to the earth, and maybe removing that word ag, or maybe removing that word farming, because those words have, a gut reaction for some people, like no. And so, really thinking about terminology and, how that message is put out there and how it's accepted. Yeah. So.
Inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you think about what you most hope for people, for the people you care about, for your community, and also for the earth, which is our life support system. What's your most inspiring for you vision or dream of how people could be living on this planet?
Yeah, I really like that question, Helen Claire. My vision is that, our rhythms are so synergistic with the earth that, everything that we do is first and foremost thought of with the earth in mind, how it would impact that. And not even at the second, but at the same time, how it impacts us, and not just individually, but, holistically, because we're all interconnected. And I'd love to see some real clouds. I'd love to see some real stars. I can't see any of those things here in Chicago. I'd love to see, no grass, because it's an invasive species, in my opinion, here in Chicago. I'd love to see the native vegetation to this area. And I just love to see people appreciate one another and our connection to the earth. I love to see more people out there growing things, and not necessarily just for food, but just growing something that that is impactful, positively, of course, and just watching what growing means, what that looks like, and what it takes to grow something, and what that energy looks like, and being able to connect with that and realize that, just the importance of not just thinking about the here and now, but thinking about the future. And the future it's already here. It's not some far out thought. It's here. And so what we do now impacts what that looks like then. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. I'm really loving asking people I interview this question, because everybody says something that's really inspiring. And as we talked about a few minutes ago, I think that's so important right now. I mean, we need to acknowledge people's pain and suffering and the earth's pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. But we have to keep a strong focus on what we desire and what's possible and what we're trying to create. Yep. So it's really important to me to ask everyone I interview to reflect on that, because if that's one thing that this podcast accomplishes, if we get people thinking about, well, what's my vision going forward for people and planet, and what if it feels good to imagine something beautiful and inspiring and then see that I'm already contributing, or I'm going to contribute more. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important right now.
It is important. And Helen Claire, I'll also say that it's important for us to, maintain those narratives and not allow people to manipulate them for their gain. And that's not just about the earth, but that's about anything. Because those narratives are powerful, and when we allow one person to change it, then that has a spiraling ripple effect on how we move forward. And so, always interested in creating a narrative and maintaining the facts, not necessarily interpretations, the facts.
Yes.
So that story is, as close to what happened as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it is really coming back to your value of freedom, that it's somehow building freedom and sovereignty forward that is including everyone, not just some narratives or goals.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Thank you so much, Akilah. I am in huge respect for the contributions you're making, the training and expertise that you have, and how you're weaving it all together. And I encourage anybody who wants to see your website to go to amrootbuilders.com. Is there anywhere else that people can follow you? Are you using social media, or is there anywhere else people can know about your work?
I am. I'm also on Instagram, the same, AM Root Builders. If you want to read any of like articles I've written, more scholarly, peer-reviewed stuff, you can go on ResearchGate. That's one of the ways that, they have a collection of your stuff, but you could just Google my name, Akilah Martin, things will come up. I have 2 pieces on the Center for Humans and Nature. I really love that group. You can find 2 pieces that I wrote there. One is a poem. The other one is a kind of like this, audio that me and another peer, Oren, that I talked about earlier, we were being interviewed and we were just in dialogue, and very powerful conversation. So I would definitely encourage you to check out that.
I think I saw the transcript for that, and I'll try to link these in the show notes. So for anyone who wants to, I'm not going to link ResearchGate. If you want to find Akilah's scholarship, do look on ResearchGate. But I should be able to link your Instagram, and I'll try to link those pieces on Center for Humans and Nature.
Right. And that's good enough. Thank you so much, Helen Claire. Okay. And then I don't know if you share out people's, emails if people want to contact me to talk more. Certainly, you can put that on there as well.
Okay, wonderful. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk with you. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Helen Claire. I really appreciate this time to be free to talk.
Thank you for listening to Humans and Earth. Please share this episode to broaden engagement in the regeneration our world needs. You'll find social media links in the show notes. To explore our other offerings, visit www.humansandearth.com.